Howdy folks. So it's come time for me to upgrade my network, and I thought I would make a video on it. This is not something that happens very often. My network is pretty stable. It's pretty much done. So anyway, I have two networks in my house. I have a gigabit Ethernet network and I have a 20 gigabit Infiniband network, and it's the Infiniband network that I'm going to be changing. In particular, I'm going to be adding another machine to the network. So currently it's just my workstation and my file server connected over a single copper link. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding my app server to that network over a fiber optic link, and I'm going to be doing it without a switch. And the reason primarily is because Infiniband switches are not consumer friendly. So they are, these giant 19-inch rack mount things with multiple power supplies, fans that make them sound like fighter jets. They draw quite a bit of power, more than an Ethernet switch would, and they start at like $400 to $500 for the speed and getting it shipped to me and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't want to deal with it. It's got to be quiet in my house because it's near bedrooms and stuff. So I have nowhere that can fit a 19-inch rack mount device at all. So it wouldn't work out. So I'm going to do this without a switch, and I'm not entirely sure if this is possible. I'm sort of hedging my bets on where IPoIB sits in the Linux kernel networking stack as opposed to bridge utils. So this is going to be a learning experience. There's no documentation on this online, so I'm just going to sort of go for it and see what happens. Worst case scenario, I can connect all the devices together, and both my app server and my workstation can talk to my file server, but they can't talk to each other. But I'd like the ability to talk to my app server directly over Infiniband if I can. So that's what I'm going to shoot for. So this has actually been a long time coming. I originally started planning this back in December of last year, and it's taken over a month for some of the parts to actually arrive. So that's why it's been so long. Generally, I don't make networking videos very often, just because my network is pretty much done. This is one of the last things that I've wanted to do, and I've wanted to do this for over a year and a half now. It's just I've just been putting it off, and I've eventually I just sort of said, screw it. I'm gonna fork up the money because I can't stand how slow the transfers are to my app server, because it runs a bunch of VMs. And I do a lot of file transfers to those VMs, and the performance is pretty shit. So I'm going to hopefully rectify that. Plus the VMs, a lot of the VM DKs for those VMs are actually on the file server, so their I/O is actually bounded by the network. So this will help with that quite a bit. So anyway, first of all, I ordered an InfiniBand host bus adapter. It wasn't this one. It was an InfiniHost 3. It was an older card. It was very cheap, and came from the US, and it arrived relatively quickly, like within a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever. And so I got it. I plugged it into a test bed. It came up. I flashed new firmware. It was like 1 or 2 versions behind, and everything looked good. And then I decided I should probably test it, right? I should probably plug a cable into it and test it. And it was a dual port card, because that's how I'm going to be doing the 3 hosts. I'm going to have one connected directly to one port and then one connected directly to the other port. So I needed a 2-port card, so I tested the first card, the first port, and it was dead. I tested the second port, and it was dead. So the card enumerated with the machine fine, but both ports were dead. Port 2 was completely fucked. It didn't even show anything. The other port sort of flip-flopped between initializing and down, and the physical link-up light, the green light, was flashing like crazy. There was clearly something seriously wrong with it, and I tried to reflow it. It wasn't a BGA issue, so I ended up getting my money back for it. It was crap, so I ended up finding this. This is a ConnectX card. This came from somewhere in Canada, actually. That's the only reason why I bought it. It was kind of expensive, but I talked him down on the shipping because he happened to be in the city next to me. So that's how I ended up with this card, which is actually a nicer card. This is a Hewlett-Packard sort of rebrand of a Mellanox card. I don't know the exact Mellanox part number off the top of my head. I'll put it in the put an overlay on the video. But the reference number for the firmware and everything is 448397-B21. So you can go to Mellanox's website and you can look that up, and it'll tell you what Mellanox equivalent this is. And I tried to update the firmware on this, and it's actually older or newer. The firmware on this card is newer than the firmware on Mellanox's website. So obviously HP has some custom firmware on this. And I'm just going to leave it because, I mean, if there's no problems with the card, I don't see a reason as to why I need to update it. The Linux kernel doesn't complain that it's out of date. So that's the only reason I'd really update it, is if the Linux kernel is designed for a newer driver or a newer firmware version. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And I've tested this card, and both ports work fine. So this card is perfectly good. And then the real wait was actually for the cable that I bought, because I had to go fiber because I need something that's at least 10 meters to get from where I, point A to point B. And copper, from what I understand, copper only goes, I think it's 8 meters or something is the longest you can get copper at 4x DDR speeds. It's 20 gigabit. I think that's the longest. Someone might correct me on that, but that's the longest I've ever been able to find anyway. So to go 10 meter, I had to go with an optical cable. So optical cables are pretty expensive, and at least the ones I could find from the US were. So I took a real gamble. There's this one listing, or two listings, should I say, that I've seen on eBay for over a year now, and they look kind of sketchy. They're from China. They're used cables. They're supposedly from Intel, and they're ridiculously cheap. They're less than half of what other cables cost, with pretty much free shipping. And I just sort of said, screw it. They're cheap enough that if I lose my money, I'm okay with it. So I did. I ordered them, and they took over a month to arrive. But this is them here. So there's some interesting stuff about these cards, or these cables. I was kind of surprised when I got these about a few things. I wasn't sure if these were genuine Intel cables or not, because I looked at Intel's website and I couldn't actually find out I couldn't verify if they actually made Infiniband cables at any point. And there's a website, intelconnects.com, which I had read off of the photos on eBay, and that domain doesn't exist. So I was kind of dubious about that. But now that I've got them in my hand, they look genuine. They look like a genuine part. But there's a few interesting things about these. Obviously, they're used. You can tell they're used. They've got some markings on them, some dings. The only really wrong thing about this one is you can tell it's been pulled at one point, because if you actually look in the strain relief, the orange housing actually disappears for a bit. So obviously this has been pulled, and the housing, or the sleeving, has actually broken inside here, and there's the bare fibers you can see inside that strain relief. But the cable works fine. I'll just say that straight up. The cable works perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I get the proper speed in both directions simultaneously. I've done a torture test. The cable is fine. So as long as I don't move that too much, I think I'll be okay. But it's got obvious signs that it's been used, of course. There's a little tag that says Lucy on it, so I'm assuming maybe that's the name of the node that it was connected to. You can see that there are these tags, of course, for all the different node names, how long it is. There's a couple of those. There's this tag here, which is interesting. It gives like a serial model, product code, laser radiation. This is the Intel on this side, and this is where it gives an IBM part number. So this may have been a rebranded unit at one point. But the other side sort of has the same thing, but what sort of is more interesting is this tag. I know it's upside down. It says engineering sample on it, so I'm not quite sure where these cables came from. But the seller has a lot of them of multiple lengths. So yeah, I mean the listing looks really sketchy. Like it's just like some rug, and they're just like laying on a rug, and they've taken photos of them. It's just, I don't know. But anyway, they work, and that's all that really matters. They get a bit warm, of course, because they've got the transceivers built in. They're just powered from the card, and then the optical transceivers are in here. I don't really want to open these. even though I know I could because they're just Torx, I really don't want to screw with these because it's taken me so long to get these. Now I have to order another, another cable. I couldn't go through that delay again. So anyway, it's 10 meters. I'm not going to get the whole cable off of my floor. That's not terribly interesting. This one's going to set this so it doesn't fall. So anyway, yeah, so I've tested the cable, I've tested the card. That all works. So the way that I'm going to do this this changeover is I'm going to start by taking both my app and my file server down. And the app server doesn't have a slot for this. Of course, this is an X8 card, and I need the motherboard only has X1 and X16. It's got a single X16, which currently has a dual port gigabit card in it, a gigabit Ethernet card. So what I'm going to do is I did a video on, I think it's my second channel, where I screwed around with my file server to try and bodge another host bus adapter in there, and it's got the exact same dual port gigabit Ethernet card. And what I ended up doing to make that work, it's got the same issue. It's a different motherboard, but it doesn't have enough X16 slots. So what I did was I took the X4 card and I sliced with my Dremel a notch in the slot, so that they're in the edge connector, so that would fit in the X1 slot. And the chipset that's on that card is designed to run in X1 mode, and because it's dual port gigabit, that's technically 4 gigabits per second. So you do the math. I mean, a PCIe X1 lane is 5 gigabits per second, so it should be perfectly adequate for that card to run it in an X1 mode. And I've been running my file server for a couple months, and the card has been perfectly fine. So I have to cut that card. That's the first thing I got to do, and move it to an X1 slot so I can fit this thing in the only X16 slot there is. Then, of course, this is not actually going to go in there. Actually, this is going to go in my file server. The single port card that's in my file server is going in my app server, just due to physically where the machines are in my house. It's the only way I can make the cables work. So I've got to take both machines down to swap the cards, cut that card, get it all back together, make sure the machines boot up properly, because I'm going to try and reduce the downtime as much as possible. And then once that's done, I can connect the cables and then do the config. Now the app server config is going to be really easy. It's just a single port config. Just install the OpenSM and well, actually not even OpenSM, because the subnet manager is going to be running on the file server. So I really just need to make sure that all the drivers are there, and that's about it. There's really not much config. Just set a static IP address, I guess, and that's about it. The file server is where it's going to get kind of interesting, because I've got to set up OpenSM to run 2 separate instances, one for each port. So there's going to be 2 separate subnets. And then once I've got 2 separate links working with static IP addresses, once that's working, then I've got to bridge these somehow. And what I want to do is, because I'm running IPoIB, these are basically Linux cooked network cards. So they're sort of, they pass TCP/IP traffic. So they're like Ethernet cards. So what I'd like to try and run bridge utils, which is a package which allows you to do Ethernet bridging. And I'd like to see if I can get that to work on the Infiniband card. So basically, this dual port card would be seen as a single interface and have a single IP address, and it can pass traffic from one subnet through to the other. So that way I can have my workstation and my app server communicate basically over Infiniband through this transparently. That's what I'd like to have happen. And I know it's not the best performance and all that stuff, but these links, I've benchmarked them at about 12.4 gigabits per second of actual real data throughput. I don't have anything on any of these machines that can saturate that. So if I suffer performance losses as a result of this going through my file server, I don't care, because it's still going to be much faster than the disks in any of these machines, even the SSDs. So I don't care if I take a performance hit. It's a lot better for me than to try and deal with a switch. So I've rambled enough now. I think it's time to actually get on to things. So I am going to start by cutting the Ethernet card and swapping the cards around and getting the servers back up after I've done that. So here is the card out of my app server. So this is just the HP NC360T. And I've got to make this fit in an X1 slot. So I've got another NIC here, which is just an X1. And I'm just using this to make sure that I don't cut the wrong pins, because that would not end well. So to do that, I'm just using a Dremel. So just using a Dremel with a rotary bit. And I like to come in from the bottom. I find that's the best to do it that way. And I take about 4 pins off is usually what's needed to get this to work. And of course, if you're doing this, remember these boards are made of fiberglass, so you probably don't want to breathe it, and you probably don't want to get it on your skin either. And safety glasses are definitely a must. So basically, you never want to go above the area where the solder mask is removed, because you're not guaranteed that you're not going to cut traces at that point. So it kecked up there a little bit, but I believe all the traces that are there go straight down. So hopefully everything's still fine. I got to clean that up a bit, because you've got to go pretty close, or otherwise it's not going to sit properly. Because most sockets are most of the slots actually overlap a bit; they overhang a bit. So I need to get a little bit more off. So I think I'm just going to get a file off the remainder of those traces, and I think I can actually get a little bit closer to that pin on that side. Yeah, I kind of want to get a little bit closer on this side. Oh, gas. But yeah, it's just a little bit too much over. Okay, that looks much better. So yeah, just want to clean up the, just want to file that off a little bit on the, you can see the little copper from some of the traces that are no longer there. So get rid of that, and should be ready to reinstall into an X1 slot. Excellent. So here's my app server, and there is the dual port card, which is sitting quite nicely in an X1 slot. Would fit perfectly first try, no problems. And as you can see now, I've got a free X16 slot, so I've got to take apart my file server to get out the HBA, the Infiniband HBA, and I'll shove it in there. So there's the HBA installed nicely in the X16 slot. I had to go get a screw because I forgot this case uses those, it doesn't come with screws, so I had to dig one of those out of a pile. So now I've got to install the new HBA in the file server, and then I can fire up the file server, and then I can bring this machine back up. The file server has to come up before this machine, so I've got to finish that first. So there is the HBA installed in the file server. Wonder if you can guess which card it is. It's actually the second one from the top. It's just so crowded in this machine. It's got two HBAs, two SATA HBAs, an Infiniband HBA, and then a Ethernet adapter. So it's kind of full at this point. But anyway, it's all back in. It's plugged into port 1, which should enumerate as IB0. So this thing should just come up as if nothing had changed. Actually, it might not, because it's using a different driver. It may think that's an Ethernet card. It actually might not bring up the InfiniBand network. So I may have to update the InitramFS after making some config changes and then reboot. But I guess we're going to find out right now when I power it up as to see whether that'll work or not. So I've got everything back in, and I've been having some issues with the driver for that new card. Now, the way that this is a ConnectX card, so it uses the MLX4 driver rather than the MTHCA driver for the old InfiniHost cards. And this driver comes in 3 pieces. It comes with a core, an Ethernet piece, and an InfiniBand piece. And the core piece is loaded by default. But the InfiniBand piece you need to specify you want loaded, or otherwise the card doesn't come up as an InfiniBand card. And on Ubuntu 14.04, this is very easy to do. You just specify a line in, etc modprobe.d/mlx4.conf. However, if you try to do the same thing in 12.04, which is what my file server runs, it basically, when you try to do an update in InitramFS, it gives you a fatal soft dep loop error. And apparently this is just a bug. So I'm trying to get that module somehow loaded without that line, and I've tried multiple things in modprobe.d to try and get it to install, and it just won't install that module. So I've been rebooting the machine, trying different things, and every time I do it, I cannot get the card to come up. If I manually do a mod probe for MLX4IB, it comes up, of course, but this has to happen automatically. So I'm not quite sure if I should just ghetto it up and put it in like rc.local or something. Let me actually just try that. I really don't want to do that, but for now, just to get this moving, because this has been down for a lot longer than I expected it to be. Let's try this and see what I can do here. Because once I have this thing basically coming up on its own, I've already tested, like I've manually mod probed, the card comes up and I can connect with my desktop and everything, so that's all good. So once that's functioning, then I can boot up once this thing stops rebooting basically, then I want to try out bridge utils, and I kind of want to get this thing all ready before I bring up my app server, so I don't have to reboot my app server again. So we'll see. I'm going to do a bit more investigating on this, and I'll come back once I've got this working. So, as you can see, I've got both machines plugged into my file server here, and both links are up, and the subnet manager is managing 2 subnets. Holy shit, this sucked. I didn't film it because it was not going well, and I needed to sort of concentrate on what I was doing. The long story short is bridge utils won't work. There is some sort of driver problem with the InfiniBand links. It's probably to do with like the MAC address or something, because InfiniBand uses much larger MAC addresses. But basically you try to run bridge utils and it looks like it works, but it doesn't, and if you run it in a different way, it spits out some sort of invalid argument error. So it's really difficult to tell whether it actually worked or not. But I mean, it creates the interface and everything looks like it's working, but the network is unreachable over it. So I had to sort of abort that idea and get the system working on 2 separate networks. So there's 2 separate subnets, Ethernet subnets now. So I have a .10 subnet and a .11 subnet. And the reason for this is because if I make them both the same subnet, then they both have the default route for each subnet is
it's duplicated. So even though it's technically reachable on one of the two interfaces, it doesn't know which one. So they have to be separate subnets to make this easy. Now, I'm not completely giving up on the idea of bridging this. I'm not going to use an actual bridge, like as in bridge utils. What I want to do instead is I want to take and probably use IP tables and see if I can basically forward packets through this machine. So do it almost like a router would do it. That's what I'd like to try. So basically the packets will be addressed to the other subnet, but I should be able to get IP tables running on this machine and just do it higher in the network stack. That's what I'm going to try. It won't be as clean, but I don't see any reasons to why it shouldn't work. So I'm going to go with that and see what happens, I guess.
Okay, so I've given this a little bit more thought, and it doesn't look like what I originally wanted to do is going to be possible. So this is Tesla. This is my file server. This is ifconfig. I know it's deprecated. Shut up. I'm not using IPA because it sucks. So you can see I've got IB0, IB1. They both work. They both have different IP addresses. So I'm using the 10 subnet for one port and the 11 subnet for the other port, which is kind of awkward, but it's what I have to do. Now, my workstation is connected to one port, and my app server is connected to the other port. Now, I've modified all the mounts and everything on my app server so that it uses the Infiniband link rather than the Ethernet link to mount VDIs and stuff. And you can see from the TX bytes that it is indeed working properly. I actually had a scare where it actually hung on boot up. Mount all just sort of gave up trying to mount the CIFS shares. It uses CIFS, not NFS. It's an older machine, older config. So again, when I rebuild that machine when Ubuntu 16.04 comes out, I'm going to move over to NFS. But until that happens, I'm not changing the config for 3 months. It's far too much work, far too much risk. And of course, my desktop uses the other interface port, but getting access between these two is going to be incredibly difficult. First of all, so bridging doesn't work. The next thing I thought of was to use IP tables to do some sort of NAT, effectively, some sort of forwarding. The problem with that is it's unidirectional, of course. You can NAT in one direction, but you have no return path. So I could, for example, I could SSH into my app server, but I could not, from my app server, make a connection back, because it would basically require port forwarding to do that. And that's not something I particularly want to deal with. Nor do I. No, the thing is, I don't really see there being a need for that. So it's possible I could get away with just doing that. But there is a much bigger problem, and that has to do with VirtualBox. So I kind of didn't really bother to verify that it was even possible to bridge a network interface on VirtualBox with a Linux cooked network interface. And apparently that is not possible, because it's not a thing that I can do. I do not see IB0 in this list, and I've checked with other VirtualBox installations on other machines that have Infiniband cards in them, and it doesn't appear there, not with the web GUI, it doesn't appear there with the regular GUI. So it doesn't appear that you can put one of those cards into promiscuous mode, which I overlooked completely. I thought it was possible. And the real reason why I did this upgrade was to get Infiniband on all of my VMs. That was really the big reason why I did this. So at this point, I mean, I can run their VDIs off of it. It's working properly. So I mean, it'll at least remove the I/O bottleneck. But things like, I mean, a lot of these run, Samba instances, and I mount those and I do file I/O to them. So they're still bounded by the gigabit Ethernet. So I'm going to do a bit more digging to see if there's a way that I can manually force VirtualBox to bridge a Linux cooked network interface. It's Probably, it may be possible. Maybe like a command line only option. Maybe it's unsupported or something. Or maybe the GUI just has some sort of filter that's not showing it, even though it is technically supported. So I'm not giving up on this yet, but I definitely need to do a bit more research first. So ultimately, I've pretty much determined that there's nothing I can do, and it's pretty much, I've got 2 links. They're separate subnets. My app server and my workstation can both talk to my file server, and that's it. That's what I'm left with. The VMs are still using Ethernet, and I can't directly talk to my app server from my workstation. That's just how it is. I'm not super bummed out about it because at the end of the day, I mean, I spent $100 on these parts, which is not really that much, and also I do get rid of the IO bottleneck issue. It's just gone. So, I mean, I definitely got something out of this. I didn't get as much as I'd hoped for, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was a waste, and I don't think that this was a bad decision. I cannot believe that it completely slipped my mind that you can't bridge, or you can't bridge an InfiniBand adapter, because not only can you not bridge it using bridge utils on a physical machine, but you know that's what VirtualBox does. It bridges the interface. So, I mean, if bridge utils can't do it, then VirtualBox can't do it. So, I'm surprised that I didn't look into that more. But I mean, it just when you run IPoIB, it acts so much like an Ethernet network, you sort of forget that it's not Ethernet, it's underlying InfiniBand. So anyway, I just thought I'd do a speed test. Now, to go from my my desktop to my file server, I get 12.4 gigabits per second. And the reason for that is because I've done kernel tuning on both of those machines to optimize them for an InfiniBand link. And you can see Watt, which is my app server, you can see when I request a window size, it basically limits it to 416 kilobytes, and that's because that's the way the kernel's configured by default. And you can see the bandwidth I only get is 7.32 gigabits per second. Only 7.3 gigabits a second, but it's not 12 point something. And it's just simply because there's a bunch of kernel tuning parameters that Mellanox suggests you use for InfiniBand, and I have yet to apply those. I don't really want to apply those, primarily because they're, it is a web server, and it connects mostly to the internet, and I don't want to sort of fudge that. I don't want to screw anything up and sort of detriment the internet performance of that machine by screwing with how the Ethernet subsystem works. So I'm gonna just not apply tuning parameters and just live with the 7.3 gigabits per second, because again, my disks are not going to exceed that speed. So I'm still okay, even though it's not as fast as it can go. I don't need it to go any faster than that. So I can sort of work around the issues. I mean, I can sort of copy things. I can just, if I'm doing a big copy from the server, I never do copies directly. I guess I should mention this. I never do copies directly from my app server to my workstation. I basically use the workstation to grab files from the app server and basically move them through the workstation onto the file server. So all I need to do now is just sort of change my workflow such that I can SSH in and just basically tell the app server to directly send them to the file server, because that's where they're going at the end of the day, and they have a direct connection, which does work. So it's just kind of the way I'm used to using the GUI to do a lot of my file operations that causes these inefficiencies. But I can manage it. If anyone has any comments about this, feel free to leave them. But I'm okay with what I've got now. It's working perfectly fine on both machines. It works just fine. I don't have any issues. So yeah. That's the end of this project pretty much. It's late and late in the day for me to still be doing this. I mean, I waited until Saturday to do this, just in case anything went wrong. but it's been a while. I started this a couple hours ago. What time is it? Yeah, it's almost 2 o'clock. I started this at like 10 something. So yeah, I'm done for the day. I'm tired. I want to move on to other things. I got a bunch of chores to do. So anyway, that may not have been what you were looking for in a video, but that's how it turned out. So anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.